samba eu sei.
Hello, this is Ernesto Lechner, and this is the Autry Sizzling Summer Nights Backstage. And I'm so happy today because we have two amazing musicians from Brazil as our guests. We have Caro Pierotto and Grecco Buratto, who live and work in LA. Today we're going to talk about the bossa nova, this seductive and miraculous, really, sound that emerged from Brazil in the late 50s and the early 60s. And just magically took over the world. And I wanted to ask you, what would your personal definition of the bossa be?
On a personal level, the bossa nova is the Brazilian cultural stamp. It's a calling card. A few things come to mind. Bossa nova is definitely one of them. Musically speaking, to me, is I grew up not playing Brazilian music. How I began here in LA playing bossa nova because I was Brazilian and they needed a guitar player and they assumed that I played bossa nova, so I had to go and learn.
And Caro, how would you define the bossa?
Yeah, to me, it's very similar too. I did not grow up listening to bossa nova intentionally, of course, but it's always playing everywhere and it's playing on TV and, you know, places we go. It was always playing in the background growing up, but it was never what I put on a CD player to listen. You know, I was listening to American pop, you know? When I moved here and then I started my career as a singer, it's very similar to Grecco. You know, they assumed that because I was Brazilian that that's what I did, and those were the first gigs that I got as a professional musician. I'm very grateful for that because it has definitely shaped me as an artist and as a performer as well, and it has opened so many doors for me. It still does every day. You know, just last night I played a concert and that's what it was, bossa nova. And somehow I think my voice, my timbre,
Right.
kind of matches very well the genre, and it's very effortless to me too. And I think that is magical in itself because even though I did not grow up listening to it, when I got here, when I started playing in ensembles, like I knew the lyrics for the songs. And then when I write too, I feel, because I'm not the most prolific guitar player, but somehow bossa nova, it's very instinctive for me. And
Right.
and most of my songs, I start writing them in bossa nova and then I kind of shape them into whatever. It's very magical. It's very almost like in a DNA level.
Yeah, it's embedded.
Embedded, and then it kind of comes out.
Something that is very fascinating to me is that in Brazil in the late 50s, there was a completely different sound that was favored by big stars like Dick Farney and Lucio Alves. That was almost like a transposing Frank Sinatra to a Brazilian big band. And of course, mixed in with a samba being the protean format of all Brazilian music that exists and will ever exist. And then this bossa nova, this new wave appears with artists who, at the time, of course, to us, they seem so venerable and old and cozy, but at the time, they were sort of cutting edge. And they were influenced by more contemporary jazz, and they were also influenced by the French Impressionists, by Debussy and Ravel, in the sort of the treatment of dissonance and the chord progressions. And they created this sound that was this mixture of samba with cool jazz. I think there was also a big dialogue going on with America and with people like Stan Getz and Burt Bacharach as a composer. They were both influencing each other. And this beautiful new sound that sounds so silky and subtle and sophisticated and wistful. I think it's in a way encapsulated by the lyrics of Garota de Ipanema when he says, Vinicius de Moraes, when he says, here's a girl walking by the beach. Why is life so sad? And it's this contradiction, this saudade, this, you know, life is so beautiful that I want to die, so to speak.
Right.
And it kills me to think that at the time, those sounds, when they emerged, the first bossa nova records in 58, 59, 60, they must have sounded so modern, right? So avant-garde. Have you thought about that? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, yesterday I was reading a book by Roberto Menescal and Bruna Fonte. And it talks about Roberto Menescal's point of view of what happened and how it happened. It was a counterculture movement, that started with young people. That sentiment that you just said, life is beautiful. So why I don't want to be singing about my heart is broken and, we live in Rio and we have the beach and, life is great. I don't want to be so dramatic. It was a photograph of their life experience at that time. Everybody wanted to live in Copacabana back then. So they were building new apartment buildings that had only small apartments, right? So everybody could hear everything that went on in these apartments. So they would get together every day to write and play music. This is Roberto Menescal, Carlos Lira, Ronaldo Boscoli. It started at Nara Leon's apartment. João Gilberto would show up. So they would get together to write and play. But they couldn't play very loudly because people would hear and complain. So this style of playing very quietly and singing as if you're speaking was born. And João Gilberto is the same thing. He could project. He grew up listening to Orlando Silva, Os Cariocas, that era of singing. And, they could project. They were crooners. They needed to sing in front of an orchestra like Frank Sinatra and all those guys. So he could still do that. But then he went into this laboratory of finding a specific sound where he would lock himself up in a bathroom because the reverb of the bathroom would bring his voice up, and then he would just murmur very quietly, and that became his sound.
There are two absolute heroes of the movement. I mean, that two people who define everything that bossa nova is all about, and that would be Antonio Carlos Jobim with his piano and his love of impressionism, and then this ambassador, this diplomat turned poet and lyricist, Vinicius de Moraes, doing the lyrics. Without these two men, you wouldn't have bossa nova. I mean, most of the classics of the genre were written lyrics and music by these two. But what do you think about a genre that still lives on to this day, but is defined to such an extent by two artists?
Wow. I don't think I ever thought of it this way, but that's completely right. I think it stems from just being genuine and honest. I think they were just fully immersed in the moment. For me, for us, I think that's one of the biggest goals as just artists and as human beings is just how am I like really present right now? Am I really connected with what's going on right now, and am I really expressing? Am I really being a tool for what's being interpreted by my perspective right now? I think that's where the magic came from. They were just like, that's all they did. They breathed it, they ate it, all their friends were...
They drank it for sure.
They drank it and smoked it for sure. It was like a lifestyle. I think It was more than just a musical thing. It's like everybody was just tuning into the same radio station and were kind of manifesting that.
This was right before the military took over in Brazil. Brazil was the country of the future, as the slogan said in Brazil, right? We had just built Brasilia. They were starting to build cars. There was this hope, pride. It was an atmosphere of enjoying life and living life to the fullest at that moment.
And freedom.
Yeah, carefree,
You make music separately, of course, you collaborate, but I know this, that you have distinct musical identities. A Caro Pierotto album has a completely different feel than a Grecco Buratto album. I treasure and enjoy both. And I see that in a way that sometimes there are little moments that are like authentic bossa nova. Just it could be maybe a few chords, or it should be like a phrasing in the voice of Caro. It could be something like that. How is it that the authentic spirit of the bossa finds its way in moments of the music that you make?
it's a blessing and a curse for us to be able to connect to either or and be okay in all situations. Really, I feel very honest and genuine singing a bossa nova, as I feel the same way singing a reggae song. You know, when we go to have this conversation with somebody that it's more on marketing side of things, they're like, okay, but what do you do? Because you do this, you do that, you do that. Like, I don't know where to. They don't know where to put me in which shelf they will put me, and that sometimes kind of fires back at me in a negative way. And then lately, I've been like, you know what? If you cannot get what I do, that's your problem to decide. I do this. I can express myself in many ways, and I'm very happy and fulfilled about that. So again, I think it's literally that DNA thing. As a composer, as a writer, you know, I am so influenced by anything and everything. The other day we were watching the documentary for Frank Sinatra's life, and it's like you get so inspired, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to do a jazz album, you know, like a crooner album. And I will express myself fully and authentically, even if I did that, because that's how I connect to anything that I sing. I feel like we can express ourselves in any way and still have that identity coming through, I hope. You know, that's my perspective.
Yeah, to me, I had spent like a New Year's Eve with a bunch of friends, and I spent the night talking about music. I felt inspired to come back to LA and dive head first into Brazilian music, which I had never done. And so that's what I did for a while, for a few years. It was just listening to Brazilian music. When I started writing, or when I reconnected with writing, the songs that came out were, to my surprise, A, in Portuguese, and B, they were mainly bossa novas. So that was all, you know, you're feeding the algorithm, or the, you know, the machine, your brain, your soul, whatever you want to use as a term, and then that comes out. And that's what they did too. I mean, Jobim would listen to Debussy and Chopin and, you know, and Stan Kenton, and that's what came out in his music.
True.
I mean, what Jobim and all and Vinicius and João Gilberto, what they did, it was amazing, because it stands. It still stands.
Timeless.
It's timeless. They were not looking
To build anything, right?
to, you know, I mean, even Menescal in the book says, I didn't know what Carnegie Hall was. I said no. So I, you know, and then Jobim called and was like, hey, you know, I think you want to come on this one. Maybe they didn't see themselves as professional musicians and artists. They were just enjoying it and writing songs and playing songs and getting together. And I think after the Carnegie Hall concert, that changed.
Well, all right. This is, like I said, my favorite part of Autry Backstage. Now you're going to play a tune that I understand is going to be somehow influenced by bossa nova, or it is a bossa nova. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to be listening to.
So this song is influenced by bossa nova. I actually wrote it when I was in Cape Verde. I spent a month in Cape Verde back in 2006. This song kind of came about because I wanted to write a song like in the more traditional Brazilian form. Like most of the things that I was writing back then, it came out as a bossa. It talks about the samba is much like the blues or any kind of music that tries to convey what you feel, but it's not always possible. You know, that saudade is something that's not really tangible. You feel it, and as much as we try to explain it with words, most of the times we fail. Não, eu não sei de tudo que há entre o céu e o mar. Por que é que nasce o sol e existem mais estrelas que eu possa contar? Não, eu não sei de tudo isso que me faz pensar se existe algo mais além do alcance desse meu olhar. Do samba eu sei, do samba eu sei, da dor que vem navegando nas ondas. Do samba eu sei, samba chorei, um samba faz da tristeza do amor que se sente e se sofre em paz. Zeraia, bare, daraia. Zeandaraya, Zendara, Zeraya Vaya, Dearaya, Zaraya, Raya, do samba eu sei. Samba eu sei, da dor que vem navegando nas ondas. Do samba eu sei, samba chorei, um samba faz da tristeza do amor que se sente e se sofre em paz. Da tristeza do amor que se sente e se sofre em paz. Da tristeza do amor que se sente e se sofre em paz.
Wow, just so that you know, the sole purpose of my existence is to live for moments like this one.
You're too kind.
This is what I do here on planet Earth.
That's
Thank
a
you
good,
for that.
I enjoy moments like that. So you're gonna play another one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great,
This
great,
one-
great. Please do.
This one, it's called Melhor Assim, Better This Way. And it's part of a project that we were writing songs for Facebook Sound Collection. And they wanted classic bossa novas. So I just kind of wrote the song and I brought something that was happening at the moment. And I love the song. I'll send it to you later, actually. Because it's not like on Spotify or anything, but I think you'll like this one. Amor que se vai e não deixando, já não era mais verdadeiro amor. Melhor assim, que seja o fim. Melhor assim, mais perto do amor de mim. não era mais verdadeiro amor. Melhor assim, que seja o fim. Melhor assim, mais perto, mais perto, mais perto do amor de mim, do amor de mim.
Caro Pierotto and Grecco Buratto, thank you so much. This was just magical. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
The Autry Museum of the American West thanks our members and supporters.